Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for Yulio's Jump Week, where we cover Yulio Jump, our cloud rendering engine for CET, Revit, and SketchUp over 3 days back to back. If you tuned in yesterday, you would have joined my colleague Nicole for our first session of Jump Week covering Yulio Jump for SketchUp. Today, of course, we're going to be focusing on Yulio Jump for Revit. And then tomorrow at 2 p.m., Nicole will cover Yulio Jump for CET if you're interested in joining that one as well. So today we're going to focus on establishing a practical Revit to VR workflow and explore how integrating VR and AR in your presentations can really enhance your client-facing process. So some of you on our webinar today might be familiar with Yulio Jump for Revit and looking for a refresher, but others might be brand new, and that's totally fine because today we're going to cover a deep dive for everybody. And we also have some really exciting updates that we've released for specifically Yulio Jump for Revit over the summer. So as we kind of go through the plugin together, we're going to take a look at all of the new areas of the plugin as well. So that'll be really exciting. Our main objective for today is, of course, to cover rendering for VR and AR using the Yulio plugin for Revit. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we're also going to look at preparing your model for rendering and then also viewing and sharing your project post-render. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them into the question box, and I will be sure to get to all of them at the end of our session. Now, before we jump in, my name is Dana Warren, and I'm the Manager of Client Success here at Yulio and the host of your webinar today. My contact information is on the screen now, so if you'd like to follow up on today's webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll also share this at the end, so you can also grab it then if you like. And then lastly, if you do have to leave today's session early or you have a team member who wasn't able to join, I am recording the full webinar and we will send it out to everybody who's registered. So feel free to share that link once you get it. So I find that VR experiences really help in immersing your clients in your designs and really help them to understand size, scale, and flow so much more effectively than just a 2D image or a floor plan. It really creates those wow moments, and it truly engages customers like never before. So we're going to jump in and we're going to start out by talking about what Yulio Jump is, and then of course, how to use it. Now, before we do anything, I want to make sure you all know how to access the Yulio Jump for Revit plugin. So, for those of you who are new to Yulio, it's our cloud rendering engine that can render your projects in minutes and can auto apply navigation and lighting enhancements to turn your model into a VR ready experience. And to begin rendering with Yulio Jump, you of course need to start off by installing the plugin, which can be downloaded directly from the Autodesk store. So you can see that here. You can just download it right there. The Yulio plugin is free to download, of course. However, in order to use it, you do have to have an active Yulio license. So if you are on a paid plan, that's great. If you don't have a paid plan with us yet, I definitely recommend trying out our free trial if you haven't yet, because you are able to test out Yulio Jump on the free trial as well. So with the Yulio plugin, you can render your 360 panoramas, which are the files that you need for VR, as well as augmented reality assets and 2D perspective renders. So let me quickly show you what those file types look like, just so we're all on the same page. So again, this is what you can generate out of the plugin. So on the right-hand side here, we have our 360 panorama. So this is the file that Yulio is generating and the file that you need to be able to view your VR experiences. So those 360 panoramas, whether you're viewing on your browser, on your headset, on your phone, regardless of what that might be, this is what Yulio is generating. This is what you need for VR. And then on the left-hand side here, we have like your regular generic 2D perspective render, which are the types of files you'd be used to rendering before being introduced to virtual reality or Yulio. So Yulio Jump can produce both types of files. And the ones that we're looking at here were rendered with Yulio Jump. I'm going to go through how we create the two different types of files as we get into the actual plugin side of things. But just note that you can produce both types of files directly out of the Yulio Jump plugin. Obviously, the big difference being this is what's generating your VR experiences. And then this one is just like your generic 2D render that you can view or insert anywhere. Okay, so now that we've looked at installing our plugin, let's switch over to Revit to start preparing our model for rendering. Now, most of you, Yulio Jump for Revit is probably going to look quite different than it did on our last training session. And that's because I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but over the summer, we released quite a few really exciting updates to the plugin to really complement your workflow and make rendering your Yulio projects easier than ever. So I'm going to work with two different models today just because I want to show you all the updates and show you how best effectively to use some of those newer features. But regardless of the type of space that you're working with, before you render, you just want to think a little bit about how you might need to prepare your space. So for a virtual walkthrough type experience, we recommend creating a fully enclosed building shell with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor kind of at minimum, like we have here. So we're working with kind of this first model that we're working with is a single level. It's a fairly large kind of office environment. But what I want you to think about, regardless of kind of the type of space that you're working with, is think of the journey that you want your customer to take through the space and then kind of plot out your route accordingly for virtual reality. So, do you want them to, for example, if we're looking at our floor plan and we're thinking about the 3D views that we're going to create for our space, do you want them to kind of start at the bottom and work their way to the top? Do you want them to enter through the main entrance and then work in like a clockwise direction or a counterclockwise direction? So just think about that journey a little bit that you want your customer to take throughout the space, or at least at minimum, think about the areas that you want to highlight for your virtual reality experience, and then just make sure you're creating kind of your views accordingly. You have to think about the fact that you're now rendering for virtual reality, right? So having that kind of fully enclosed space with those walls, a ceiling, and a floor, and maybe even furniture. You don't have to have furniture. It's just kind of dependent on where you're at in the design process. But you have to think about that your clients are no longer just seeing directly what's straight in front of them. Although we set this as our view, for example, they're still able to fully look 360 around their space. So they're able to look behind where this camera is placed, as well as up, down, left, right. You get the idea. But so just think about that a little bit as you are placing your cameras. I recommend to maybe bring them out from like corners a little bit, just so you have something interesting to look at as your customer might fully rotate in that view. And then just, of course, like I said, think about what you really want to highlight throughout your space and what areas you want to make sure you're hitting. Now, the 3D views that you create here in Revit do become kind of the scenes that make up your virtual reality project. So we've gone ahead here and set up 7 different cameras around this floor plan. So you can see a couple different of these views right here. Now, what I will say is that the number of views that you create for a project definitely will vary kind of space to space. If you're working on like a single room, small model, I would recommend like 2 to 3 cameras. One single scene can still give your clients an understanding of your space, but I tend to think it can leave a rather like limited and stationary feel if you're not able to move around. So having at least like 2 to 3 perspectives, even in a small room, just helps to like, give them that option to move around and fully build out that VR tour. Um, and it also develops like more of that impressive VR walkthrough. But like I said, it does vary project to project, especially because this is such a large kind of floor plate size. We only have 7 cameras. That's definitely on the lower end for this project. You could probably put 20 cameras in here and it would be kind of like that thorough walkthrough. But again, it is going to vary project to project. So some smaller experiences, again, you might only have 2 or 3, but some larger ones, you might have 30, for example. So it's definitely going to vary. One thing I always like to highlight for your VR views is that you are able to adjust the camera eye elevation and the target elevation. Now, generally for VR, we recommend that you set your eye elevation to a standing height of about 5'6". It's kind of like a really good average standing height for your typical VR walkthrough experience. Now, you can get really creative with it. You can raise the camera up even higher to create like a bird's eye view of the space, or you could lower it down to get right underneath an object to show the mechanics of it. We've also seen some users place the camera like right over top of a chair and then raise or lower the camera height depending on the height of the chair. And then you're creating like a seated perspective of the space. So again, you have the creativity and the flexibility to play around with it, but otherwise kind of the generic standing VR tour that is generally about 5'6". All of your views will appear here. You can rename them by right-clicking on them and hitting rename. Sometimes renaming them before you render with Yulio will make things a little bit easier on the back end, but you can always rename things later if you forget. I tend to recommend to make your view names a little bit more creative if you want, especially when you think about that like end tour result. While camera 1 2 3 might help you keep things organized, especially while like editing hotspots and stuff like that, it might be a little bit it wouldn't be as clear to like your end client and maybe not as exciting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So having kind of a more creative naming convention for the different areas of your space will kind of provide a better end result for that like fully finished VR tour. But again, it's totally up to you. If you prefer to keep numbers 1 through whatever, that works as well. Okay, so next we're going to touch on lighting. So if you are rendering with the Yulio Jump rendering engine, we designed it to simplify the rendering process as much as possible and take complexities like lighting off of your hands. So currently, the Yulio Jump for Revit plugin has 4 different lighting models to choose from within the plugin. So we have Revit environment lighting, we have exterior/bright, interior/shaded, and Revit neutral materials. And we're going to discuss the benefits of each one so that you know which one will work best for your project. And I'm going to show you samples as we go. So let's open those up. So the first method, and the one that we recommend using, is the Revit environment lighting model. And this lighting model will give you the best render result and will provide the most realism for your space. So it's definitely the most advanced, and when you're using it, Yulio Jump will render any lights that you've placed into your space and acknowledge them as light sources, meaning the lights will be on. So the only thing to note here is that in order to use this lighting model, you do need to first place lighting into your space. So that is kind of the one caveat. It definitely looks the best and you have the most customization over the lighting, but you do have to spend the time to place lights into your space. Now, if you prefer not to do that, you kind of want the quick and easy method, We have the exterior and the interior lighting models. And these ones are great because they require really minimal user modification. You don't have to worry about placing any lights into your space. So the exterior lighting model. This lighting model will work best in an environment with windows, maybe even a skylight. So this lighting model accurately simulates what would happen in the real world because it simulates an artificial sun with like a skylit or skybox type of lighting model. So this lighting model is definitely more physically correct than the interior lighting model, meaning that any shadows or projection you're seeing will look more realistic to your brain, as the exterior lighting model is actually simulating how light moves in the real world. So you can see like the light coming in through the windows and all of these different spaces here. Now, in comparison, the interior lighting model, I really want you to notice back here, especially the difference from the exterior to the interior. So the interior lighting model works best in an environment with maybe very few or less windows. And what it's doing is producing an artificial light source within the space that artificially adjusts the lighting so that the space will be evenly lit. So we saw how, especially back here, it got a lot brighter. So in this case, the lighting model will probe the scene to see if there are any areas that are darker than others, making it look as balanced as possible. And now one thing to note about these two lighting models, so the exterior and this one, the interior, is that any lighting you have in your space, so if you do have lights in your space, we are going to ignore them and replace them with our own lighting algorithm. So your lights will be rendered, so you can still see the light sources are here. However, they're just going to be rendered as objects. They'll not be acknowledged as a light source. So essentially, they'll appear as off. Now, in some cases, this is really great because you don't have to worry about adding any of your own lighting to your space. But again, for a more realistic render, I do think that the Revit environment lighting model does work the best. And then lastly, we have the neutral materials lighting model. So this one is essentially a neutral mode, and it's a great lighting model that allows you to focus on maybe making decisions faster by removing all materials and finishes. So obviously here we've stripped everything down and just replaced it with that neutral kind of beige tone. Now, we do find this allows you to focus on making spatial decisions a lot faster. As you can see, when you select this lighting model, all materials, textures, and finishes that you have applied will be ignored and replaced with this neutral tone. So now that you have an overview of all 4 lighting models, just make sure you adjust your model accordingly before you enter the plugin. So for example, if you are wanting to use that Revit environment lighting model, just make sure you've placed lighting throughout your space. What I do always like to say though is, depending on the size of your model, Yulio Jump only takes a couple minutes to render. So don't be afraid to try the lighting model, especially like with one scene, just to start off, just to see what your results are going to look like before kind of committing to rendering the whole model. So don't be afraid to run those tests, especially when you're just starting out with Yulio Jump. As you start to use it more, you'll get a sense for what you like the best and you won't have to run those tests as often. But just when you're starting out, I always like to recommend that you do that. Okay, the next thing that I want to mention before we jump into the Yulio plugin is AR tagging. So if you don't already know, Yulio offers fully automated augmented reality publishing directly from Revit. So this is an optional enhancement for your VR project that lets you incorporate an AR hotspot into your VR experience. So for your clients, that means that they can see project elements like furniture, feature walls, light fixtures, whatever it might be, in full 360. And then they can also take it one step further using their VR headset, phone, or tablet to see how the element looks and fits in their own physical space. So to export augmented reality assets and have them be created as AR hotspots in your experience, all you have to do is first tag the items in your model using Yulio's AR tagging convention. So begin by selecting the item or items that you would like to tag. And then we're just going to start off by selecting the item. So you can select whatever you want. Again, you can select one chair. You can select a whole group of items if you want. We've also had users who have done like a full live feature wall. We've had users who have done like a full pergola. So you definitely aren't limited by like a table and chairs. That's just what I have here in this model. So that's what I'm going to show you now. But so once you have your item or items selected, you're just going to come up here and hit this create group icon. And then the only thing you have to make sure you're doing here is using our naming convention. And you do have to be pretty specific. So the tag is hashtag Yulio AR equals, and then this is essentially your tag name. So you can label this whatever you want. I'm just going to say chairs and table. But again, you can label it whatever you want. And then just hit OK. And now we've created our AR tag with these three items. So these three items are going to be rendered together in one tag. If I wanted to render the three items, but in separate tags, I would just have to make sure that I first go obviously delete the tag that I just created, but then I would just need to make sure I select like the chair and only tag the chair, then do the table and only tag the table. So just do them in three separate tags rather than here I have them all in one. And that's just because I want to show off the configuration kind of in one AR tag. But again, you can do it either way. You can do it both ways. There's no right or wrong answer. Okay, now that we've set up our camera views, we've tagged our AR models, we've looked at lighting, we are ready to render with Yulio. So we're just going to go to the add-ins tab here, and then we're going to find our Yulio Jump plugin. Don't forget to install it, of course, first. The first time that you render with Yulio Jump, you're going to be prompted to enter your Yulio login, so your email and your password that is associated with your account just to verify your license. So you'll have to do that the first time you use it. And then the second time you hit the Yulio Jump icon, all of your kind of render settings and options will pop up. So we're starting out here with this project type option. So you have here VR project or Yulio perspective. Now, this is going back to what I showed you at the beginning, how Yulio Jump can generate these two different file types. Now, it's the exact same rendering engine, the exact same process. The only difference here is the file type that you are telling Yulio Jump to generate. So if you select VR project, it's going to create those 360 panoramas and it's going to send your project directly to your Yulio account to view in VR. And then if you select Yulio perspective, those files will be emailed to you. So those renders will be emailed to you once they're finished. So we're going to start off by selecting VR project. We'll come back here and take a look at the Yulio perspective option at the end. Next up here, we have select renderer. So if you're using Yulio Jump to render and you want to continue using the Yulio Jump rendering engine where you can choose your lighting model, nothing has changed in your process. Simply select Yulio Jump here as usual. Now, one of the new updates to Yulio is that we now have this Enscape and other option. And again, this is one of our new and exciting updates to the Yulio plugin that we released over the summer. And it's Yulio's compatibility with Enscape or another rendering engine that you might use to create VR content. So why did we do this? Many of our users love using Yulio to create complete VR experiences. So with our navigation hotspots, our AR assets, our floor plan, and then on the other end, the easy URL sharing and our robust suite of post-rendering enhancement options. But sometimes they prefer to use a different rendering engine, like Enscape, for example, to actually create the 360 panoramas themselves. They've used Enscape or a different rendering engine for a while to create VR content. They're used to it, but they want to use Yulio again for all of those different features that I mentioned and for kind of the sharing and presenting side of things. So we thought, let's put that all together. And so what we did to make all of this easier is that we've built the functionality directly into the Yulio plugin that lets you seamlessly use Enscape or your preferred rendering engine alongside Yulio to create those VR experiences. The only difference is that if you choose Enscape or other, you'll need to pre-render your 360 panoramas in your chosen rendering engine before proceeding in Yulio. Once you've pre-rendered those panoramas in Enscape, for example, you can come back to Yulio to build that framework of your VR experience. So you'll see when you select Yulio Jump, the next step here is to select your scenes or your 3D views that you'd like to render. So we're just going to do that regardless. We're going to start by selecting our scenes, and you can select as many cameras here as you want to render. We're going to start out with the 2 and then just hit done. Now you'll notice if you've selected Enscape or other, it's the same, the process is the same. You have this new assign panoramas option. So what you'll need to do now is upload the corresponding pre-rendered panorama to the scenes that you've selected to include in your project. So remember, with this option, you've pre-rendered your scenes using Enscape or any alternative rendering engine. And then what you're doing now is you're using Yulio to actually create the project because you want to include those navigation hotspots, the AR models, the floor plan, and on the other side, the URL sharing, the hotspots, all that jazz. So what we're doing now is we're going to assign the panoramas. And this is essentially telling Yulio which scenes and which panoramas you're actually uploading so that it can kind of put it all together and create that complete VR experience. So we're just going to hit assign panoramas, and you'll notice here I just selected the 2 cameras. That's why I only have the 2 options, but if I selected 10 cameras, I'd have a list of 10 different options here that I need to kind of upload and match up. So for each of these, all I'm doing is hitting browse, and then navigate to where your files are pre-rendered, and then just upload it. So again, I'm matching camera 1 with camera 2, I'm matching camera 1 with camera 1, then I'm coming down here to camera 2, and again, I'm just hitting browse, and I'm just matching everything up, and then Yulio is going to do the rest for you. So that's the only added step if you want to use Enscape or, again, another preferred rendering engine, is you just have to make sure that you are uploading your pre-rendered panoramas to the plugin, and then Yulio will put it all together for you. So this is going to become even more clear when we actually go through with our render. I'm going to proceed with Yulio Jump, but just note the end result is literally going to be the exact same. You won't even be able to tell at the end kind of if you uploaded your own files or not, because everything on the end in Yulio looks the exact same. Now, next up here, we have our enhancement settings. So if we check off add navigation hotspots, Yulio will auto-generate those navigation hotspots for your project so that you can move scene to scene while viewing in Yulio. If you prefer to do it manually yourself, you can definitely do that. Or if you just want to add them later, I'm going to show you how to do that in just a couple of minutes. Add AR models. So if you tagged AR assets in your Revit model and you want to include them with your render, make sure you have this box checked off. That's all you have to do. And your AR assets are going to automatically be included with your project render. And next we have add floor plan. So this add floor plan option, you have always been able to select one floor plan to use for your space. But of course, we recognized that that was kind of limiting, especially for multi-story buildings. So another exciting update to the Yulio plugin is that you can now generate floor plans for single level or multi-level projects directly from Revit. So Yulio will automatically add markers to your to your floor plan, indicating where each scene is in your space, and the selected floor plans will be uploaded to the VR experience in Yulio, ready for viewing. And this is so helpful to allow your viewers to orient themselves in this space, especially for those more complex building spaces. So the model that I'm working with here, we do only have the single level, but I am going to show you a multi-level building in just a couple of minutes and what this kind of floor plan selection tool will look like for that. You can upload up to 10 floors in one single project. So if you have a 10-story building, perfect. You can render that all at once directly out of Yulio Jump for Revit. If you chose to render with Yulio Jump, you will have this rendering style option. This is where you're selecting your lighting model. So again, you have Revit environment, neutral materials, exterior or interior. So we're going to go with Revit environment. And then at the bottom here, we are able to select which folder in our Yulio account that we would like to upload our experience to. This just helps you keep things nice and organized. You can always move things around later on in Yulio if you want to, but again, this just helps you kind of keep things organized right off the bat. And then lastly, this box here, if you check it off, it will automatically send the experience to your headset and will automatically load on any headsets connected to your account. So again, just speeding up the process of getting that project to VR. Once you have selected all of your preferences, all you have to do is hit create project. The time to process and render will depend a little bit on the size and complexity of your project. To give you an idea, on a smaller project like this one here, where I'm rendering a few scenes, but with all my navigation hotspots, AR models, floor plan, all that good stuff, it will only take me about 5 minutes to render. And then regardless of how long it takes, when your VR project is ready in Yulio, you will receive an email notification to let you know that your project is ready to view. And then again, if we go back to the beginning here, and if we select Yulio Jump Perspective, you'll notice that things get a lot simpler here. So a lot of your options go away, and that's because we're just creating those 2D perspective renders. We don't have our hotspots, our AR, floor plan, anything like that. Again, the rendering engine is the same. It's literally just the file type that you're creating. But the only options that you have here are to select the scenes that you want to render. Again, select the lighting model that you'd like to use. The lighting models work the exact same, whether you're rendering for VR or for the 2D perspectives. And then again, these files will be emailed to you. So you can just hit create project. Okay, so now before we view this project and see what it looks like on the flip side, so in Yulio, let's take a step back and look at a model with multiple levels and what that multi-floor plan selector will look like. So like I said, you can render up to 10 levels at a time. So this model is not quite ready to view and share, but I wanted to share it today just so you can get an idea of what it looks like when working with that larger building. So we have our level 0 where we have our cafe perspective, and then we have level 1 where we have our office perspective. So when I hit Yulio Jump here, and I'm not going to go through all the different settings because we just did that, but it will look the exact same here. So we can still add our navigation hotspots, our AR models, selecting our scenes. So we're going to make sure we do cafe and then go all the way to the bottom here and hit office. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to select our floor plans. And now, again, we have multiple different floor plans to select from here. So we can select up to 10 levels. So I'm going to start off by selecting level 0. And then you're able to select which floor plan you actually want to use for that level. So if you had like an electrical plan, a site plan, an HVAC plan, all of those would be listed here. And then you just select whichever one you actually want to use for that floor plan. And then Yulio Jump will render it accordingly. Now you can see here that I've only selected one level. So although these two scenes are on different levels, right now I've only selected one level. So they're both going to be added to this floor plan, which doesn't make a ton of sense. So I want to make sure I select my second level. And I only have one floor plan associated with level 1. That's why I did not get this drop down. But now that you can see, now that I've selected the two different levels, Yulio will list all of the cameras on that corresponding level. So you can see here level 0, I have my cafe, and level 1, I have my office. And that would be the same for if you selected up to 10, and if you were working with 50 scenes, the number of scenes listed on each floor plan would be viewable here. So once you've done that, you're just going to hit done, and then you're just going to hit create project as normal. And then the really nice thing, like I said, Yulio was automatically uploading those 10 floor plans to your project, and then everything is going to be viewable and shareable immediately once the project has finished rendering. All of your floor plans will be generated with all of your floor plan navigation ready to go. So I did pre-render these projects just because I didn't want us to have to sit and wait. But once your project does finish rendering, it's going to be viewable in your Yulio account here. So I have all my different folders listed on the left-hand side, and then I have my corresponding projects in the middle here. So we're going to start off by viewing our project here in browser mode. And if you select this view in 360 icon right here, it's going to open up my project in a new tab, so I'm able to view it. But if you do click into your project, you're going to be taken to this edit project page. Now, every project in your Yulio account has a space like this, and this is where you'll see all of your project assets. And then all of your additional enhancement content like your audio, your images, your video, your AR, your floor plans, all of that is visible here on this edit project page. We do have additional webinars that cover enhancing your Yulio projects. So if you are interested in a deep dive on those, definitely sign up for one of our future webinars. Take a quick look at the landing page here. But we do have one later this month on October 22nd, this Beyond the Basics one. This is a new webinar, but it's going to be really exciting because it's kind of for our more advanced users, I would say, that are going to dive a little bit deeper into the Yulio platform and look at some of those more advanced features. So that will be really great. If you want to cover the basics and learn how to create those hotspots, though, that we were just looking at, so like our audio or image, definitely join our Getting Started webinar on November 5th. And then on December 4th, we have a really exciting kind of year in review webinar that's going to cover all of the updates from this year. So it'll go through kind of the Revit once again, which you guys obviously saw today. But the one on December 4th will cover everything even outside of Revit as well. So definitely recommend checking that one out because that is something new to Yulio that will be a really great kind of review of everything that we did this year. I will share this kind of webinar sign up link at the end. I'll have it on screen if you want to take a screenshot or a picture of it then as well. So don't worry about that. Okay, so next up, let's open up our project in browser mode. So if you hit this view in 360 icon, your project is going to load in a new tab. And while viewing in browser mode on a computer, like I said, you can fully drag your mouse around to view full 360, to view the space up, down, left, right, all that good stuff. If you're viewing on a touchscreen device, you can use your finger to hold and drag along the screen to view the project. And then as we look around the space, you'll notice these hotspots that we're seeing here. This project is immediately out of Revit with no user intervention. So all of these hotspots were automatically generated. So we have our navigation hotspots. When we click on those, we're going to move around the scene. And then if we go back, we have our augmented reality hotspots. So this, I'm gonna come back to this in just a second, but these are those AR assets that we tagged that we can view in augmented reality in our actual space. So I'm gonna come back to that in just a second, but these were all auto-generated and uploaded by Yulio into your project. We also have our floor plan. So again, this is our single level story, but all of these markers were added to our floor plan for us, and we can click on any one of them to navigate using that way as well. So again, really helpful to kind of orient ourselves in the space and know exactly where we are by navigating with the floor plan. Let's switch over to our other project. So this is the multi-level building where we rendered the two different floor plans. And what this experience looks like is you still have your floor plan icon down here in the bottom left-hand corner. So we're going to open that as normal. But now you'll notice this new icon in the middle here, and that's signaling that we have multiple levels. So we have our first level and our second level, and you're able to switch that way. And then we also have our floor plan markers that were added automatically for us as well. So that's the difference. If you had 10 levels, this list would simply list 10. So that is the way that you can navigate using multiple different floor plans in Yulio. So we just go second level and then click on our marker. And again, you can have way more scenes in here and up to 10 floor plans, but that is the way that Yulio Jump will auto-generate it for you. Now, really quickly, I want to show you the hotspot editor in case you do want to make adjustments to your auto-generated hotspots. So sometimes when you render your navigation hotspots or your AR hotspots, you might want to make small adjustments like the size of the icon, the placement, the labels, whatever it may be, the color, and you can do all of that in our hotspot editor. So you enter the hotspot editor just by clicking this blue icon in the top right-hand corner. And again, this can be found on your edit project page. So you enter the hotspot editor directly through the project itself just by clicking into the project and then this blue hotspot editor icon. And now all of your different options for enhancing and editing your hotspots are along the left-hand side here. I'm not going to dive into this too much today. Again, if you want a deep dive on the hotspot editor, that's what our November 5th webinar will be for. So definitely make sure you join that. But I just wanted to give you at a high level, if you did want to edit the placement, the color, the label of any of these auto-generated hotspots, you can. Just click on the hotspot you'd like to edit. If you want to move it around, you're literally just simply dragging it and placing it where you want it. And then if you want to edit it further, just click on this little edit icon. You can adjust the depth and then the color. You can make it any color that you want. And then the label, if you wanted to hide that altogether or adjust the actual name of the scene, you can. Same thing with our auto-generated AR assets. If we wanted to move it, we can. Or if we want to edit it further, just click that editing icon and you have some more options here. And again, on November 5th, we're going to dive deep into the hotspot editor and how to create and edit all of our different types of hotspots here. Okay, I do also want to quickly mention viewing in virtual reality. So viewing in browser mode, which we're doing here, is a really great experience, but it is not true VR. So viewing in a VR headset really does provide that immersive viewing experience because it feels like you're actually standing in the space and walking through the space. And for viewing in VR, we recommend the MetaQuest headset because it does offer the best viewing experience at an affordable cost, and Yulio is fully compatible with it. So if you are interested in viewing on a true VR headset with like the full Yulio experience, the AR, all that, definitely try out a MetaQuest headset. And now, before we wrap up for today, I want to make sure that we focus on these AR hotspots because this is such a cool capability within the VR project. You can view your AR hotspots on a phone, a tablet, a computer. My favorite viewing experience for the AR hotspots is on the MetaQuest headset. But we're going to talk about each and take a look at each now. So in browser mode, which again, that's what we're doing now, to view an AR hotspot, you'll just click on the hotspot that you want to view. Really the only capability here we have in browser mode is to rotate the item. We can bring it close up or further away. But that's kind of what we're limited to in browser mode itself. The next level of viewing would be by using your phone or tablet, and this will allow you to actually place the AR model in your physical space. So if you are viewing on a computer already, you can actually scan this code with a phone or a tablet. And then from there, your object will appear in your real world environment using augmented reality. And you can manipulate the object by moving it around or resizing it to fit your space. So let me show you what that actually looks like. I have a pre-recorded video of it. There we go. Oh. Sorry, it's not playing. Let's see here. There we go. So this is viewing it on a tablet. You can see I just opened the hotspot there. And then this is what it's going to look like. If you're using a phone or a tablet, it would be the same experience, but Yulio is just going to scan your space quickly because it's actually adding the item fully to scale into your environment. So you can see it places the item, you can rotate it, you can bring it closer, and then you can actually fully walk around that item too. So it allows you to kind of visualize what that item or configuration or set of items will look like in your space. And then lastly, my favorite way to view the AR hotspots is using, like I said, the MetaQuest headset. It's definitely like the phone experience. However, I find it a lot more realistic and immersive. You can still place it in your physical space using the headset cameras, and then you can also walk around it. You can bring it right up close. It's just really easy to kind of manipulate it. So this is what viewing on the headset looks like. So this is actually recorded in the headset. You can see we're opening up the hotspot, placing it into our space, and then using the controllers to place it where we want it. You can walk up to it. You can look right at it. It literally looks like you're looking at this item in your actual space. So a great way to kind of try before you buy that whole idea. And again, just another kind of immersive, really interesting and exciting experience and a way to show off your work or your ideas. And you're not limited to like a desk and a chair like we're looking at here. Again, we've had users who have done like pergolas, feature walls, fireplaces, whatever it might be, any type of like item like that you have in your space. And then those are just the controls on the MetaQuest controller where it's telling you how you can interact with the object. Okay, that is it. That will wrap up our Yulio Jump for Revit webinar. I know that was a lot of information to take in and not a lot amount of time, in a short amount of time. And I know that I threw a lot at you, but I hope you were able to learn a little bit more about Yulio Jump and how seamlessly it can maybe fit into your workflow. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions, please go ahead and submit those now in the chat box, and I will stick around for the next couple of minutes to answer those. If you do have any additional questions or you want to set up a session together to go through anything we talked about today or just Yulio in general, how it's working with your team, how you'd like it to work with your team, whatever it might be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is at the bottom of the screen there. Of course, if you have any questions later on, if you think of anything, again, don't hesitate to reach out. And then lastly, that try.yulio.com/webinars, that is the landing page where you will find the sign up information for all of our future webinars. So definitely check that out as well. But otherwise, I think that is all for me. Again, I'm going to stick around if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, thanks so much. And Nicole will see you tomorrow for our Yulio Jump for CET webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everyone.